How are you guys doing? Hey, my name is Jason Dames. I'm with Final Start Fitness. We have the privilege on today's show to be able to introduce Debbie Morris. We actually had her on a past podcast. You might remember we talked about health over, like just losing weight or just, we talked about health being priority. And so if you haven't got a chance to check that video out, I'm gonna go ahead and put a show notes card right up here. Go ahead and check that video out. But I'm really excited. We're going to introduce somebody that's been working with Debbie Morris, Kaila Studt. And we're going to be talking about her transformation. We're going to make this into like a two-part video. First, we're going to just talk about Kaila's transformation. It's just phenomenal. We're going to post some pictures up here too as well. And then we'll also, she's recently pregnant as well. So we want to, second part of the video, kind of talk about ways that other women can go through their pregnancy in a healthy way. So I'm really excited about this conversation. Thank you guys so much for spending some time coming on the show.
Thank you for doing it.
Oh, my pleasure.
We're so excited.
I'm so excited about this conversation. I think it's going to help a lot of people out. And
yes.
I think a lot of times, when you hear somebody else's story, you can see yourself in their story, or maybe give them confidence that they can actually overcome like different challenges that they've had in the past too as well. So it's so cool. So Debbie, why don't we start just by talking a little bit about your introduction to Kaila as a client.
Sure.
You wanted to have her on because she's just been like dialed in, really followed everything to a T.
Yes.
And we'd love to talk about this transformation process.
What was interesting was it was sort of during COVID, a pretty strong portion of it, and there was a wedding that came up. And I told my husband that I thought, maybe we shouldn't go to the wedding. With me having an autoimmune disease, it was a little bit tricky with that many people. Maybe we just shouldn't go. And he said, whatever you think, Deb. And then out of nowhere, I just said, we really need to go to the wedding. We should be there. We should definitely make an appearance. And he was like, oh, I'm sure he thought I was crazy. And he was like, okay, we're going then. And so we went. And we ended up sitting with them at the reception right next to her. And so then we ended up talking about what we did. So obviously God knew where we needed to be, and protected us from a health perspective as well. But we just explained what I do. I do a 6-month nutrition program, and she kind of took interest in it. And then she called me and ended up getting signed up. But the reason I wanted to do the video is because I've been doing what I do, and the extent of my program has been for almost 20 years now. And I've also been a personal trainer. I've learned that nutrition really has to be dialed in to really change the shape, change the body. Because I did eventually give her some exercise advice, but it's basically been primarily nutrition. Yeah. But Kaila was so disciplined through the process. For the most part, in all of my career, I have never once felt that I had met someone that I would be willing to hire like that and start downloading what I know into them so that they could do what I do. And Kaila was one of them. I told her, I said, I would hire you if you ever decide you want to do this for a living, because she took it that seriously. But she also brought the Spirit of God into it. She used this as an act. She saw this as an act of obedience to the Lord. And that is part of my ministry. My ministry is health, but it's also Jesus. And our body is a temple, and she saw that. And she sought Him through the whole process. And her results were remarkable. I mean, if you look at the pictures, they're just remarkable. Of course, that's the outer man, but it's changing her family. It's changing her as a person. She's just better because of it. And now she's going into a pregnancy where she looks phenomenal, of course, but she feels the best she's ever felt. And during the time that we met for nutrition, I knew she was anxious to have a baby. I knew she wanted to. And the message was always, God's going to know when it's the right time, Kaila. Don't worry about the weight loss. God will know it's the right time. And it is the perfect time. She looks phenomenal, and she feels great. So it couldn't be a more exciting situation. And I feel there are people out there that need to see and hear her story and know it's possible. because they are sitting there thinking it's not possible.
Yeah.
They're thinking they have too much mind work to do, or they have they're too much inflammation, too much of this. Kaila dealt with all that, and she worked through it.
I would love to shoot this over to kind of a little bit for Kaila in terms of, you know, I've worked with people in the past, and so much has to do with like mindsets, you know, in terms of changing the way you think about things. And I'm sure that Debbie brought on a lot of little different nuances and things to think about, and things to think differently about. You know, maybe could you elaborate on what that process was like, and maybe some of these new, you know, changes in your life and processes that maybe seemed a little bit difficult, but you also obviously had a lot of trust with Debbie, like, hey, I'm gonna go into. So maybe share a little bit about where you're at with that in terms of jumping in and saying, hey, I'm gonna trust Debbie in this information.
Yeah, I think one of the main things that I've talked about that I feel we were talking before about, I went into it when we sat down at the wedding, and I was like, Jeremy, that's my husband, I was like, that's the lady I've been telling you about, because I had heard from other friends like their success and the changes, and you could see that they were a different person. They felt different, not just physically or whatever, but internally, like they exuberated a different like life message. They just had more vibrance, and you could just tell they were different. So I think we sat down, and I was like, that's what I was telling you about. I was like, okay. So we went home, and my husband and I talked about it, and I in my head thought, what about this time is going to be different? Like, I had tried so many times. I feel like so many people do. They try and they try and they try, and they get on this good path, and it's like a weekend, 2 weeks in, at the end of the month, you're like, I give up. I want that, or like, it just feels too hard. And so in my head, I was like, should I really go for it? Like, what will be different? And I was like, all right, God, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to go for it. And I think that's the first thing, is everything in our walk with God is a choice. Like, are we going to take that first step, though it feels like you're not sure what it's going to look like, or you just know that God is saying there has to be a change here, and I'm going to help you if you're willing to say yes. And so I feel like that was the first mind shift, was me deciding that I was worth it, that even though, like, yeah, I wanted to work on my kids' eating, or like my husband, or my relationship, or my career, or whatever it is, fill in the blank, I was worth it to make that choice, because God loved me, and he had a better plan for me than I was currently living. So I feel like that was the first thing, just allowing myself the uncomfortable, vulnerable of saying, okay, Debbie, I don't know you. I just met you, but let's do this. There's something holy about accountability that I think a lot of people miss, because you feel like it's hard to be vulnerable, or it's hard to like feel like you're asking silly questions like, oh, can I have this? Or what do I do here? I'm going out of town. How will I make it work? Or just all the daily things that your mind processes in the mindsets that hold you back because you feel like it's not attainable. The accountability part of it is so holy, because we need God. Without God, we cannot do anything. And so God gave us each other as, you know, community and people to help people and to connect people. And, you know, those moments in time when you meet someone and you're like, we're supposed to continue this journey together. And so I felt like with Debbie, though I wasn't sure, and it was scary to be vulnerable, making the choice that I was worth it because God loved me and I knew he wanted me in a different place, and saying, I'm going to do it with Debbie. And I feel like was the first step, was the first change, just saying yes.
Can I interject on that part too? Because, and you probably get this a lot, and it's the fact that you said you got to the point where you had that mind change of, hey, I'm worth it. I think I've noticed this, in particular with a lot with women, is they're such nurturers and givers, and they feel really bad about, you have kids, so
3.
there's
almost 4.
yeah, so there's demands on there, and so they feel like taking time out for themselves and recovery and being healthy sometimes is selfish.
Yep, that's the word I was thinking.
Yeah, so that's so neat that you brought that up, because one, our value does come from God, and I always put it this way, is hey, if you take care of yourself, you're going to be a better version of yourself for other people, right?
right.
You're going to be better for your kids. You might not be as snappy, or let's just say you just from stress and everything, worst case scenario, you end up having cancer. What good are you going to be?
Right.
And so it's not, if you switch that in terms of, hey, we're the temple of the Holy Spirit. We do have value because we're God's kids. He wants us to take good care of ourselves, so that way we can, be the most effective. Or maybe it's you want to be able to go on a mission trip or whatever, things like that, being healthy. We're going through this whole COVID thing,
Yes.
It's another reason why we should focus more on becoming healthy and having a strong immune system.
Right.
So that way, when things like this do happen, we're not affected. It's just, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
I think that that is a struggle for both men and women, is feeling like you're good enough to set time aside to actually make yourself a priority. Even my husband will say, I don't know, Debbie, you work so hard all the time. I feel bad when I'm just over here working out and hanging out in a chair. He's like, just being around you, kind of feel like I should be doing something while juggling, while sitting in the chair. And it's like,
I can see him say that.
Right, but we all have our call. God's called each of us to something different.
Yeah.
And even though I'm that busy or I work that much, I still make myself a priority. I get a vitamin therapy on Tuesday. I see 2 different chiropractors, and I get a massage every single Tuesday.
Wow.
My whole day is about figuring out how to make myself the healthiest version of myself for the rest of the week. I make sure my food is prepared. It comes before anything else. Those are all ways. I get up and I walk every day. Those are all ways that I'm making myself a priority.
Yeah.
I'm in the Word, I'm in the Bible, I'm worshiping, I'm going to prayer meeting. Those are all ways that I'm doing it for myself. And the beautiful thing with Kaila, and what I pray for with other clients, is she adapted to that right off the bat. And sometimes it takes me 3 months to really try, I don't care, male or female, to really try to help them to understand you cannot be all God's called you to be unless you really attempt to take this path and clear everything that has your flesh so on fire, and really put your faith as the dominant muscle. That's truly what's keeping you strong, And she did that from the very beginning. And then she trusted me, and she was given wisdom by God to trust me. And so then when I said, Kaila, I want you to try to do it this way, and then tell me how you feel. She told me how she felt.
Yeah.
Well, if this happened and that happened, we pull this out, we put this in. We were filling gaps all throughout the process.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yeah.
We found the rhythm that worked, but we were communicating on a very regular basis. One night she was like, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I just realized I texted you at 10:45 at night. I was like, no problem. I responded. I didn't know what time it was either. And we were just dialoguing, the whole time. And, and it was like, we just became family.
Yeah.
I care about her. I want her to do well as everyone else that I work with, What the neat thing about Kaila and every client I have is I can only get the message of the gospel out to so many people. I can only get the message of health out to so many people. Kaila now is a carrier of that. Everywhere she goes, she's a contagious spirit, not only for the Lord, but now for health.
Yeah.
And what would that do to the kingdom if we were
Absolutely.
all healthy, if his disciples were stronger, right?
Yeah.
Both mentally and physically. So it's the same. I love working with you for that same reason. But what we've done with Kaila and how she's been able to change and what the Lord's done in her is going to impact so many other people.
Man, that's such a good point.
And I can't do that. I can't get in front of those people that she can.
Yeah, because think about the people that she'll inspire.
Right.
And when you give other people confidence, when you go through the change. But I'd love to transition to another mindset thing that you kind of just brought up, which I think is a great. But I'd love to ask a question before that. So we forgot to say what your transformation was like. When you started, what was, I don't know if you want to like necessarily talk about weight per se, but like just, you know, your overall transformation, where you started and then what it was like. I mean, obviously you lost some weight, but those aren't the only metrics of, you know, health and things like that. But could you kind of give us a little bit of backdrop there? And I'd love to ask another question on top of that.
Yeah, so my background, I was telling her about how when I was looking through old pictures, I think the thing that stuck out to me was that I didn't not love that person that I saw in like pictures. It was more that I looked and I was like, I look so uncomfortable. Like my face was swollen. I just was inflamed and just uncomfortable all the time. And yeah, it's hard for me to talk about, or I don't know if I should mention numbers or not.
Yeah, I mean, I'd definitely go ahead, like just to kind of give an idea.
Okay, so I started about 211, and I always tell Debbie, I'm like, Debbie, I'm not sure that starting number is right. I think it was actually higher than that. And I'll forever think, I wish I would have just weighed twice just to make sure that was really my starting weight, because I think it was more around the 220, I'm guessing. So, and my lowest before like the baby popped was, I think we said
130, 135.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, and then the waist change was
substantial.
40 and a half to
substantial.
29. Is that?
That's
I need to
amazing.
check, but
40 and a half.
Oh my gosh.
29.
Yeah.
Can you just imagine how you feel every day?
Absolutely.
Bend down and touch your
Oh my
toes
gosh.
and not
Well, it's
have
funny because
40
I've
and a half
had clients
waist.
say that, like just the little things of like just being able to tie your
Right.
shoes.
yeah.
And not feel like you're holding your breath while
Yeah.
you're doing it, because you're suffocating your diaphragm. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea what your body fat percentage?
We didn't check
No, I
it.
didn't check
I've
it.
never really been in a habit. I just
Yeah.
feel like if someone is
That would be
overweight
cool to
like
know.
that
Yeah.
at that point they don't want to be aware
Right.
of, you know. But
Yeah.
at the and I think what happened was we got pregnant.
Right.
You know, so
Yeah.
it was like, okay, let's focus on that. Let's not
Absolutely.
focus on body fat. You know what I
Right.
mean? So, but I think we were on a
We were on a
path where
path
we were
towards
going to
that,
go that
yeah.
direction. You know, start changing her shape and everything.
Man, that's so cool.
Yeah, and I think too, yeah, just always feeling uncomfortable and just knowing and like looking and thinking that I just know that God has more for me. Like I just know, but feeling like I couldn't get it and that I had tried so much and I just couldn't. Like, yeah, maybe I would lose weight here or lose weight there, but it was like the eating patterns, the comfort eating. You know, I've been on both ends of the spectrum. I used to work in like the modeling world, helping models and a local modeling agency just like with their models, and lived in New York and studied fashion and dealt with, you know, under eating, and then to the extreme of comfort eating and all the in between. And so for me, that's why I don't really like to focus on numbers and more about how I feel. But I understand the importance of it too, because it's like scientific fact is showing like, wow, there were changes made here.
Right.
And so I think overall, the journey was, how do I feel all along the way? Do I feel like I feel better every day? Yes. Do I feel like I have more energy? Yes. Do I feel like my emotions, my hormonal? I think that's like the number one thing is a lot of people, when they talk to me, they say like something along the lines of like hormones can't play that big of a role in it. Like, you know, that's like more focused on hormones and that. But it's like, well, no, like that's huge. Like the hormones.
That's what's scary, is because like the fitness industry has done such a horrible service of just saying, oh, it's just about energy expenditure.
Yeah.
Macronutrients.
Yeah, when
follow
Or weight.
this profile.
yeah,
right?
like and so the fact that people that would say that just shows how undereducated we are the fact that hormones regulate our entire body, like in every aspect of our life.
And insulin is such a big driver.
Absolutely.
You know.
I know Dr. Ben Bigman says it this way, but insulin's kind of like the quarterback of the hormones, and so a lot of the other hormones are getting their cues from what's going on in their blood sugar.
Absolutely, especially
That's
adrenaline.
a really good point. Yeah.
And so let me ask you this: how long was that process?
We were talking about that last night. So I think I calculated we started at the end of September 2020, and the 6-month mark would have been March of this year. So my lowest weight was May, or like early May. So I'd say it was somewhere between like the 6 to 7.5 month range, if I'm doing my math right. Starting at the end of, we basically started in October.
That's dramatic. Oh my gosh.
To lose over 70 pounds.
Yeah.
The reason why I was curious about that is because, oftentimes it's a long process, but that's a relatively short process to lose that much weight and so forth. So, I mean, it just goes to show you that if you can, get the right foods and the right programming and, like having your help through all that process that you can. But the reason why I wanted to kind of ask that, because a lot of times I just heard you talking about how, like, hey, you were having conversations about different foods. You probably had, like, some eliminating some and throwing some back in, like you were just talking about. That all takes, like, a process, and we have this calories in, calories out model and this short-term, like, mindset of just, like, I want it off, like, this second. And it really, to me, ends up... It ends up leading to where people end up doing all the wrong things because they have that mentality. So I was just kind of wanting to maybe ask you, taking that longer term approach, but it was obviously relatively short. How that was the mindset there, how you were able to, like, buy into Debbie and, like, the process, and being able to look at all the foods that you were putting in and taking out, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think when we initially met and we were talking about my blood type and how it can impact how your body processes the food and how it goes through your body, and one thing you mentioned, I think, was chicken. And I remember I'd be like, chicken? Not chicken. But then we came along and you were telling me the story about a client that you had that they just couldn't get past this certain point and took out the chicken, and it was like
it was within a week.
Yes. And I was like, okay.
Months,
I was like, so then I thought, you know what? I have nothing to lose. Like, chicken, no chicken, it's just chicken, whatever. I'll just try it. And when I did, I was like, yep, chicken gone.
Yes.
And because of how I felt, like, I really did, after I ate chicken, and maybe not everybody's like that. Everybody probably, I'm assuming, processes food differently, right?
And for that particular blood type, chicken is it's sort of a non-negotiable, they say, so I just thought, what do we have to lose but to try it?
Yeah, exactly. And that was it. It was like, okay, if I didn't notice a difference, we could add it back in.
Sure.
Let's just try it.
Right.
Let's try whatever we have to try to get to where we feel like we're supposed to go.
Right.
So the chicken was one, and then I'm trying to think of what else. Like, dairy was, dairy.
You stay gluten-free.
Yeah, like certain types of oils.
Oh, yes, definitely. We definitely avoid pro-inflammatory and artificial sweeteners.
Yeah, and I think the thing too is, my husband and I talk about this. When you eat, we call it a Debbie meal. When you eat a Debbie meal, you leave feeling full.
Right.
And normally when you're eating healthy, you feel kind of like almost restrictive.
Yeah.
Like, in a way, you're like not, because you don't know how to do it. And that's the accountability piece. You do not know how to do it. You don't know how much. So when she says the vegetables are unlimited, I'm like, you better see my bowls when I make them at home. It is like a bowl of, like, vegetables, the protein on top, and then the fat. And I eat it and I'm like, I feel full.
Yes.
And it's like my body's in a constant state of, like, I rarely feel that feeling that you get when you're like, oh, I overate.
Right.
It's like the food is always just enough that I feel satisfied but don't feel oversatisfied. Almost like my body feels like it's always in a fasted lifestyle, like that it's broken off of me. The food is what fills me. Food is what fills me and satisfies and brings me pleasure. And I think along the journey of like cutting out different things and, you know, adding in things, it, like when she told me like different fruits I could add in and stuff, I think I was sticking with like blueberries, strawberries, raspberries. She's like, you know, you could have like this fruit and this fruit. I was like, oh yeah, of course. I just never thought. But it's just funny because once you like eat as many vegetables as you want, fill your bowl up, and if you're still hungry, get some more vegetables. Like, it's the first time that I've eaten in a way that I knew that I feel like God created me to eat, that I walk away feeling full.
Well, that's another point with the calories in and calories out model. Like, you just get a bad relationship with food and you think all food is just the devil and it's the enemy.
Exactly. Healthy food is like,
Absolutely.
Right.
So when you can actually enjoy yourself and fill yourself up, like you don't have this, you really don't feel deprived. And even though you're eliminating other foods, you don't feel deprived because you're actually filling yourself up.
And I think people feel like they need to cheat on a healthy diet. Like I have to cheat on that a little bit because I'm not sustained from that healthy diet. So I think with healthy eating and kind of the setup we've had with the macronutrient style diet is that we feel like we need an escape from that. All right. So we need a cheat from that. So it's always, when do I get a cheat meal every week, and when would that cheat meal be? Because what you're cheating on is what you feel like you're not getting enough of. And you think you're going to be sustained by this cheat meal, and actually really you're not, because you end up feeling hungrier and tired and just all these different things that come along with it. And throughout the process, people would ask, Kaila, what are you going to do? How are you going to sustain this? Like, are you really going to be able to do this for the rest of your life? But the reality is that the diet is actually sustaining her. It's making it to where she doesn't want and need a cheat meal.
Yeah.
She has found the harmony of the right foods so that she actually is sustained. And if you haven't ever felt that, you will always be trying to escape whatever you're on for the off meal, for the cheat meal. Now, don't get me wrong, we're all gonna wanna have birthday cake on our birthday, okay? But there's ways of making it, there's things you can do differently. But in her case, she wasn't ever, I mean, I offered her things.
You did.
I was sort of like trying to
mug cakes.
negotiate them. You know, like, I know you're going out of town. Would this be the time? She's like, I really don't think I need that, Deb.
That's
I'm good.
awesome.
Like, maybe we can make it with this or make it with that. Okay. She's just truly felt sustained.
Yeah.
She just
Yeah.
has. Healthy food has that ability. It can make you feel amazing and vibrant.
Absolutely.
I mean, you just feel alive when you eat it.
And you don't have to have the urge. You're not thinking about food all the time.
Exactly.
I think that's the thing, is it's like a war in people's mind because that's all they think about.
Right.
And it's like they're trapped there. And if they ever could feel what it's like to not be like it. And
escape
so
that.
like when you and I like talk to people, I think it's almost like they can't comprehend what that would be like.
Right, because they haven't experienced it.
Yeah.
So the first 3 weeks, that's what I'm trying to do. I tried to get Kaila to a point to where she could experience that. It takes about a week.
Yeah.
First week, you're sort of like, who are you? What are you doing to me? Why would you do this to me? You know.
Right.
And then the second week, it's like,
It's emotional.
oh, yeah, exactly. Second week, it's like, okay, I actually feel a little better. And then the third week, I could probably keep doing this.
Yeah.
You know.
I would love to go back to something you said just a little bit ago, and you were talking about how she's like, you know, the chicken thing, and you just ended up being like, you know what, if it's chicken, chicken. And it's such a huge point that you bring up, because for the most part, there's another mindset that is really hard to get over with when you're working with somebody, is a lot of the times they'll just say, well, I can't do that. I can't give up, or I have this texture thing, or I just can't do that. And what I tell people all the time is like, hey, if your actions always follow your beliefs. So if you don't believe you're able to do something, you're not gonna, your actions aren't gonna follow like that. If you keep telling yourself, I can't, and the fact that you were like open to that one little thing, I think is such a huge thing that would probably affect so many people if they would just have that, you know, my mentality and acceptance to say, you know what, I'm gonna try this, even though it might not be something I like, or it might be
Right.
something that's hard for me. But again, if you just say you can't, you're not going to.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, coming here, I was like, what am I going to say? Like, when I think and I break it down, it's like everything about this journey has been truly supernatural. Like, God has come in and really, really helped me. Like, to give context, like, I was choosing to eat like pizza, you know, buffalo sandwiches with ranch, fries, you know, ice cream. Like, they weren't just like occasional things, they were like all the time things. And so that was always a hurdle for me, was like, I like those foods. Like, when I sit down and eat them in like a setting XYZ, it makes me feel like connected to people, or it makes me feel like satisfied, or like after a long day, I need this, whatever it is, fill in the blank, in order to feel like fulfilled or something. But as I started making just those daily decisions, and what helped me was having the blueprint that Debbie gave me of like, this is what you're eating for breakfast, and this is how much. This is what you're eating for lunch. This is what your PM snack is. This is what your dinner is. After dinner, you go have some tea, and this is how much water, and these are the vitamins. Like, having that to fall back on, to almost make like the bad guy, like, these are my boundaries and I'm not going to stray from them, I think is what helped with the discipline and the willingness to be able to, like, you know, take out the chicken and just try it, or, you know, not have the ice cream or whatever it is. Like, and I always say, like, it's not that I don't get to have those things. Like, I don't really technically like that phrasing. It's like, I choose not to have those things.
Right.
Like, it is my choice, my deep desire, because I know how I felt. And when I see someone else eating it, I'm not judging or anything. Like, if they ask me about it, like, sure, I would tell them. But yeah, like, I know exactly what you're saying, like the texture thing, or like, I really like that food, or whenever I eat it, like, I feel full, or, you know, I connect it with this memory. But I just have to say that when you just start making the steps and you're willing to be open to help and just being curious, like, if I really want to change, if I really want to look in the mirror and say, and stand before the throne of God someday and say, God, I did it for you 100%, then you have to be willing to try new things and do things differently. Like, if we keep doing the same thing, it's not going to change. And it's like, having the accountability, you know, trusting God, seeking God. Like, I truly can say I just don't miss those things. I just don't, because I feel great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did I answer your
no,
question?
that's
okay.
that's perfect, because it really goes back to again, if health is like the main priority, then you'll be willing to let go of some of that stuff. And in a way, I mean, I think
It
food
just feels great.
Yeah.
You know?
And
I think
it's hard. It is hard.
I think what you were saying too along those lines, and I was actually like, Pastor Matt over the weekend was talking about making Christ preeminent in your life, and we can make a lot of things an idol in our life,
Yes,
you know, and food can be one of them, you know.
Food,
100.
It can be like
Yes.
us living vicariously through our kids playing sports, or it could be, you know, video games. It could be whatever, but a lot of times it's food, and it's like, I can't give this up, God. Like, the chicken was too important, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people will say, you know, Debbie is very serious. She takes this so seriously, and that is one of the primary things that is where my passion lies, is I see it as an idol. And I just put a suit of armor onto that, and I'm ready to go to war for that person.
Yeah.
Like, no, you don't
Yeah.
get to take over that person. I see the weakness on the food, and that what they're putting into it, and there's an emotion underneath that. What's being covered up? Is it fear? Is it lack? Is Is it not feeling good enough? Is it not liking yourself? Is it some sort of trauma that's gone through the years? Something, you're feeding something.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's you're not dipping into your faith for it. You're dipping over and over again into your flesh, and then it's completely throwing off your balance. And that is exactly what the enemy wants you to do.
And
get you as out of balance as possible.
It's really what happens is that, like what Paul refers to in the Bible about being in bondage to sin, you know, when we end up becoming bondage to these other things, when it's, you know, in Colossians you had the two different people. You had the Judaizers that were very legalistic. It was all about like, you got to do this, this, this. And then you had the licensed people that were like, it's just like agnostic. It's just all about like spiritual, like wisdom and stuff like that. So how you live really doesn't matter. And what Paul was saying is, no, Christ fulfills and satisfies and all that. We don't have to be in bondage to the sin part, but we don't also don't have to be in bondage of
That's right.
of the Judaism and the legalism part of things.
Because there is no one way.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing. I mean, Kayla's family may do fine on chicken. There is no one way. My husband might do great if he has pizza once a week. I might be in the hospital if I have pizza. I'm serious. You know what I mean?
True, yeah.
So you cannot be legalistic about it. You just can't. There may be some things that are kind of like, listen, you know, soybean oil is soybean oil, and not a doctor on the planet should tell you it's okay.
Right.
So if that's legalistic, then that's legalistic. But that's just, you know, safety. That's wisdom, right? But, you know, there is no one way. And so I've always patterned a business around that, around God sending the people in the door and God giving me the wisdom for each person, praying and believing to know exactly what to do with them. And in her case, we just had to learn that. That's why it's a 6-month program.
That's great.
You know, and now we're on the next year of it.
So with that
you know.
said, maybe this is something we could close out with. Maybe there's the individual you're watching and you're like, okay, well, man, I'd love to know kind of what this program looks like. Can you kind of give just an overview of the process, you know, like as far as what it went like with Kaila?
Sure. It's a 6-month program. And so I offer an individual one-on-one nutrition program, and then I also offer a group nutrition program. They're two very different things. The one-on-one is what Kaila and I did, and we very specifically nailed down exactly what she needs to eat. I mean, what to order when she goes out, what to do when she travels, what to drink, what vitamins to take. It is very specifically laid out for her day. And it starts on a very Mediterranean style diet, minus the grains. And then we typically start adding and subtracting from there. It's to lower inflammation and it's to lower histamine levels. She has direct contact with me the entire time. She can message me anytime, and we did. So we kind of became family. You know, she can just ask what she needs, and I always tell her, send me the ingredients, let me just make sure that there isn't something in there. If she says, here's the ingredients, and I say, no, I don't think you should have it, I don't just say no, I say, here's why. It has sunflower oil, and next thing she knows, she's reading an article that I've sent her, dangers of sunflower oil. She's now educated, so she's now able to walk that out to other people.
That's so good.
And then we do that for 6 months. You know, and if we need to do it for another 6 months, we do it for another 6 months. Like right now, we're going through her pregnancy in a healthy fashion. Then I have a group nutrition program that is basically a curriculum. A lot of times my folks that go one-on-one, they then go into the group nutrition program, and it truly is a very detailed curriculum. We do a live video on Facebook every Saturday in a private group, and then we also record that as a podcast so they can listen to it anytime. They also get to keep these messages for the rest of their life. It's like a library. It's 26 weeks worth of messages.
Wow.
We start the message with nutrients and ingredients, and then we go into preparation and choices. We talk a lot about cooking, a lot about how to eat out, a lot about how to travel. We talk about body and movement. So we even go into exercise, and then we talk about discipline and spirit. And we meet every week. We do a live cooking demonstration, and then we do a live workout. So there's 2 different programs, and both of those are explained in detail on the Integrity Training Systems website. But what Kaila did was one-on-one, and we really were able to, again, watch her life completely transform. But a very big part of it, and why I truly wanted Kaila to be on the video, was because she made a decision that she was going to bring Christ into this. She was going to yield to her faith, and get wisdom from God every step of the way, in addition to the fact that she saw discipline as an act of obedience to God. And it truly is. And it brings freedom in all areas of your life.
That's a great point. And I loved hearing you talk about your program, because there's 3 things that I think are very, very important for people being successful. It's information, accountability, and motivation.
Yes.
And it seems like a lot of the things that you said encapsulates all those things. And in particular, I like what you said about the information piece, because when you learn, you gain more confidence. If you have more confidence, you're going to be more likely to follow through with something.
Sure.
And so, you know, I bring
Instead
it
of just following a diet.
Yes.
You know, I just eat this because this is the Debbie diet,
Yeah,
and I'm just
right.
supposed to eat this. We can buy those
so
diets
when you don't
on the
have
internet
Debbie
all day.
standing right next to you and you're at the restaurant or
Right.
wherever it is, and you're like, oh, Debbie's not here. Well, I
don't know
guess
what to do.
I don't know what to
right,
do.
Right. And or
Yeah.
why do I not do the salad dressing at the restaurant? What's so big of a deal about it?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, well, here's the big deal. This is why you swell. This is why that you get headaches. You know, there's MSG in that. There's this and that. There's that and that. You just don't know it. And so I'm educating you on that. And then you then transfer that to others and onto your family.
Man.
But it transfers into a healthy lifestyle. Maybe that equals 70, 75 pounds of weight loss. Maybe
Yeah.
it does. Maybe it just equals not having migraines anymore, having lower blood pressure, not dealing with arthritis pain or fibromyalgia, bloating, chronic bloating. Maybe it means that, you know, but yet in Kaila's case, it meant all of that. You know, she didn't have to deal with any of that. And then she has a more sound mind. She has strong, a good, strong emotional balance now at this point. I mean, all of it factored in.
Yeah.
God
It's
is
like
able.
you said on the last video, you change your health and it changes everything. And but this has been a great conversation.
I think
would love to be
so.
able to
So
do
glad
more of
Kaila
these.
was
We are going to
here.
continue with part 2 on Kaila's pregnancy and just information that might help other women that are maybe wanting to have a great healthy pregnancy. So make sure you stay tuned. But before we do, could you just share with us maybe where people can find you, maybe if they're interested,
Sure.
Whether it's through your website or maybe they want to come in, and just visit, Integrity Training
The
Systems.
website for Integrity Training Systems is integritytrainingsystems.com. And then to call to get more information, it's 636-299-2208.
Awesome. Any social media platforms that
Facebook as well as Instagram.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Look up Integrity Training Systems. This is Debbie Morris and Kaila Studt, and this has just been such a great conversation. Make sure that you try to check out part 2 of this video. So you guys have a great day. Thank you so much. God bless you. We'll talk to you later. Boom.